As the movie begins, we meet Matthew, whose wife Claire has cancer. Medically, it is not possible to treat her because the cancer has spread throughout her entire body. Claire knew this very well, so she stopped getting herself treated, even from taking her blood sample. Then, because of Matthew's insistence, she has to give her blood sample to her nurse. As the nurse leaves after giving the blood sample, Matthew's cousin puts him on the hook. And here, Matthew steals his wife's blood sample from her. We will find out the reason behind all this later. When the nurse leaves, Matthew's cousin asks him why he did this. Then Matthew also just tells him that I have found a new way to cure Claire. It was obvious that he had stolen the blood, so he was going to do some ritual. He now goes to the bar and meets a man named Al, who is going to tell him a ritual to cure Claire. They bring a very heavy sack to their home. Al says, keep it in a place where no one can enter, so Matthew puts it in the basement. I'll then tell him to take a candle. After lighting the candle, put Claire's blood in this sack. Then make a wish. Remember that after making a wish, you don't have to look at this sack or touch it. You don't even have to go to the room in which this sack is. You just have to take a reverse step and come back from there, and then this sack will show its magic. Remember that you don't have to talk to this sack at all. Matthew says, I'm crazy. Why would I talk to it? Al says in reply, you will know this thing slowly. There may be some strange things in your house for 3 days. You have to tolerate those things, and after 3 days, all your problems will be over. That man leaves Matthew's house. At night, we see that Matthew has come to the basement to do the same ritual. According to Al, he lit a candle, put his wife Claire's blood in that sack. After making a wish, he took a step back and returned. However, by mistake, his lighter fell into the room as he was closing the door. To pick it up, Matthew had to open the door of this room. And in this way, Matthew broke a rule of the ritual because now his eyes were on the sack as well. It was moving. There must have been some energy or entity in it. Anyway, he comes out of here while ignoring all these things. We see that Matthew had also made a studio for Claire. Both of them were singers. Matthew wanted both of them to sing their songs here, but maybe Claire died without seeing this studio. He was talking to his cousin when he hears Claire's voice. He runs to the room and sees that Claire is sleeping means this is his delusion. Now the next day, when he starts cooking, he hears a woman's voice again on his mobile radio. This time, hearing this voice, he gets scared. Even at night, he wakes up. He was still hearing someone's voice, and now this voice was clear. It felt like Claire was saying, I don't know why I got cancer. Matthew should have had cancer. And after hearing this, Matthew gets angry how much effort he is making for Claire. And Claire is talking like this. In anger, he goes to Claire's room and sees that Claire was sleeping. She didn't say anything like that. He understood that the sack that he had brought into the basement, maybe with the power inside, it is doing all this. Anyway, the next day, it is shown that Matthew's cousin comes to him again. They start playing golf here, and by mistake, their ball goes to the same room in the basement where no one was allowed to go. When Matthew's cousin starts going to get the ball, Matthew stops him and forbids him from playing. Matthew's cousin found this very strange. That's why when Matthew left, he opens that room. Not only did he open this room, he also saw that sack. Many of the rules of such rituals were broken, and it was possible that the ritual would reverse now. When this boy goes and asks Matthew about that sack, Matthew starts getting angry at him. Why did you open that room? You shouldn't have gone there. Despite being angry, Matthew doesn't tell that man anything. He just says, I want to cure my wife. Anyway, as time goes by, the strange things happening to Matthew have become routine. He used to hear strange voices and get strange calls. He even started seeing a girl who had a black mark on her hand. He started getting scared of these things. One day, Matthew receives a parcel. Claire had ordered this parcel for herself. As Matthew opens this parcel, his wife Claire's head comes out of it. Seeing this, he panics and throws the box away. Hearing her scream, Claire also comes out of the wheelchair. She picks up the box and shows that it only had the wig she had ordered. Things were getting very dangerous. Now, Matthew used to get scared even with his condition. He tries to contact Al about all these things, but Al doesn't receive his phone. He didn't even know Al's address, so he couldn't go and meet him. Then, the next day, we are shown that Claire's health was improving a lot. As if that ritual was working for her, she sits on the wheelchair and comes to the kitchen. Seeing this, Matthew becomes happy. Matthew now turns towards the stove and starts cooking. Suddenly, someone puts their hand on his shoulder. At first, Matthew thought that it was Claire, but as he looked at her hand, it was dark and scary, which scared him. He realized that the person behind him, his wife, was actually not Claire, but an entity. Seeing this, He angrily tells the entity to leave. When he turned around, he saw that his wife Claire was still sitting on the wheelchair. She didn't know anything about this ritual. She thinks that Matthew scolded her and disrespected her and asked her to leave. That's why she gets angry and leaves. Claire took the shock of this situation upon herself. That night, she cuts her wrists. As Matthew sees this, he immediately calls the doctor. But the call is made by an entity from the other side and says, "You did all this. You killed your wife, Claire." Suddenly, the knife comes into Matthew's hand, and Matthew comes to his senses. He realizes that all this was a dream. The next day, when Matthew was sleeping in his room, Claire walked and came to him. Seeing this, he was happy. She was getting better than before. She came and lay down next to Matthew. They talked for a while, and after that, Claire went to the washroom. As she went to the washroom, Matthew got a call. The call was from Claire, and upon realizing this, he was astonished because the figure lying next to him was not Claire. Instead, there was an entity with Claire's face. He runs to see Claire in the room. Claire was really in his room. Being afraid, he comes out of this room. Now he sees the same entity that he has seen many times before. There is always a black mark on his hand. Afraid of this entity, Matthew did not realize when he went to the forbidden room in the basement. Now his eyes are on that sack too. Being afraid, the torch falls from his hand, and a hand comes out of the sack and picks up the torch. Seeing this terrible hand, Matthew says, "Go away, go away." And that hand also went inside as if it was listening to him. Matthew had also locked the door of this room, but still, he could clearly hear the voices. "Please let me out of here." He comes back to Claire's room. He sees that Claire was not there. Looking for her, he comes to the studio where Claire was happy to see her studio. He wanted to tell Claire everything. He tells her, "Claire, I have joined a cult to cure you. You will be completely cured. This ritual will make you the way you were before. I just have to pay a price for this ritual." Claire asks, "What price?" Matthew says, "I don't know that, but yes, I have to pay a price." Now, they were talking that. Meanwhile, Matthew gets a call from Claire's nurse, who was asking about Claire's health. Matthew tells her that Claire has already been completely cured. The nurse was shocked to hear this news because she had called to inform him that Claire had no more than 2 days left. She advised him to stay with her as much as possible and to accept this reality. While Matthew was talking to the nurse, Claire now goes to the basement room. Seeing this bag, Claire's condition was getting worse, and suddenly, she also became unconscious. Matthew had also come to Claire at the right time. He quickly picks up Claire and takes her to her room. Her condition had deteriorated a lot, and he could not see Claire like this. He thinks it's enough. He now wanted to pick up this bag and throw it out of the house because he was not able to tolerate all this anymore, but now this bag was much heavier than before, so it was not coming out of his house. He calls Al here, but Al does not receive the call. Then he drops a message to Al that he is throwing that bag. By doing this, he broke another rule of ritual that he touched this sack. After doing all this, when Matthew sits on the laptop to do his work, then suddenly, scary pictures start appearing on his laptop. These were all Claire's test reports, seeing which he got scared. Before he goes completely crazy, he decides that he will find Al somehow. He now goes to the bar where he met Al for the first time. The girl working in the bar was Matthew's friend. Through the data there, he finds out about AL's house. Without knowing that he goes to AL's house, he knocks on the door and a girl opens the door. Matthew was very shocked because she was the same girl who he used to see again and again at his house, who had a black mark on her hand all the time. This girl was very strange. Talking to her, Matthew found out that she is AL's daughter. Now she calls Al. When Al comes here, his daughter tells Al to make him understand. Make him understand that he will have to accept everything. Hearing this strange thing, Matthew stands up from the chair, and Al, the girl's father, keeps explaining to her, "Okay, I'll explain, you go from here." Now Al comes to Matthew and asks him, "Did you break any of the rituals?" When Matthew doesn't say anything here, Al says to him, "Look, there are a lot of entities involved in this ritual, and they will scare you. I told you this before. You should get used to those screams now. Look, now you have to endure something even bigger than this." He says to Matthew, "Why don't you talk clearly?" On it, Al now tells him the story of that sack. Actually, the entity in that sack doesn't do anything to anyone. It just gives us a replacement. To make him understand, Al tells him the girl you see here is not my daughter. My daughter is dead, and I live with someone else. The same will happen to you now, and you should accept this truth. If that entity didn't fulfill his wish just like that, that entity didn't sacrifice its wish to fulfill his own. Much like how Al wanted to correct his daughter, but ended up causing her death, and gave him a replacement here. Similarly, this entity was going to do the same with Matthew. It means that the entity wasn't treating Claire. Instead, it killed her, and someone else would live with Matthew in her place. Matthew asks Sal, "Then where is your daughter's body?" Al takes him to the basement where he sees that AL's daughter is vomiting that tube black. His face was scary. Being afraid, Matthew goes back to his house from there. As he reached home, he saw his cousin at the door. He took him and went inside immediately. He tells his cousin that I am taking Claire to the hospital. Before they could do anything, it was too late. Claire was already dead. Her death breaks Matthew badly. He sits here for hours and starts crying. His cousin felt very bad for him. Matthew suddenly got up while crying and says to his cousin, "Come on, help me." He didn't understand what Matthew wanted to do. He took the bag with his cousin and came to this room. After bringing the bag here, Matthew puts Claire's body in this bag. His cousin felt that Matthew was in deep trauma, which was why he was acting this way. After putting Claire's body in this bag, Matthew closes it, and Matthew's cousin brings him out of the room and locks the room because he thought that Matthew would do something bad with this body. Now he warns Matthew, "Don't you dare go to this room. I will go there myself and bring Claire's dead body out." As he went inside the room, it was shown that a terrifying entity came out of that bag. He kills this man with his big hands. Matthew's cousin comes out of the room in a bad condition. Seeing him, Matthew was also shocked. Then he is shown the terrifying hand of the entity, and suddenly, the entity attacks him. Here, the entity isn't fully visible, but it's shown that it is vomiting something black into Matthew's mouth. And the scene ends here. At this time, a nurse came to Matthew's house to see Claire's health. Matthew opens the door, and we are surprised to see that Matthew was absolutely fine. The entity that was vomiting on him now, he didn't have any such symptoms. He acts the same with this nurse, as if nothing happened here, and Claire is alive. He comes inside with the nurse, and when the nurse asks him about Claire, he asks her to go and see her in the room. Matthew did all this purposely. Matthew knew that there was an entity in Claire's room. As the nurse moved inside, the entity killed her and then placed her body in the bag. In return for the nurse's sacrifice, the entity revived Claire. However, it didn't truly revive Claire. It merely revived her body, which was now inhabited by another entity. This entity would live with Matthew for the rest of his life. Now, there was a part of the ritual that Matthew still needed to complete. After fulfilling his wish, he had to pass this bag on to someone else, just as Al had given it to him. For this, he meets a friend at the bar. His mom was sick, so he persuades the girl to participate in the ritual, promising that it will make her mom better. Why wouldn't that girl listen to him? There was evidence in front of her that Matthew's sick wife used to come to the bar with him. She used to dance with him and appeared completely fine, although she didn't know the truth about Claire. After listening to Matthew, she takes the bag to her house. With this, Matthew's entire ritual and purpose are fulfilled. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this movie and what other movies or documentaries you want me to review next. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.